first question that I wanted to get from you, the understanding, the rationale behind the introduction of these new notes.
Thank you very much, George. You recall that in 2007 there was a redenomination exercise, and one of the key advantages of the redenomination exercise was to remove the deadweight burden that was a legacy of high periods of macroeconomic instability. Once that was introduced, it helped to ease transaction costs where people were carrying volumes of money in bags and other things for low value transactions. You needed to carry a lot of notes and also made printing costs of currencies very expensive. Now, after that, all the gains we had seem to have been eroded partially as a result of a period of macroeconomic instability that we've gone through, high inflation and high exchange rate depreciation in the past. And we've seen some of the benefits from the reduction in deadweight burden being coming back into the system, where the 50 Ghana cedis, which was then seen as a store of value, has become a transactional currency that is carried around, and it's very expensive to print transactional currencies, but it's being used. The frequency of using the 50 Ghana cedi has increased significantly, and it's become a transaction currency for payment of goods and services. So with the macroeconomic stability that we are achieving now, with inflation well anchored into single digits and currency depreciation well contained, we thought that it was time for us to claw back some of these benefits. You recall that in 2007, at the time of the redenomination, the highest denomination, which was 50 Ghana cedis, was equivalent to about 50 US dollars. The long period of instability has eroded that. Now, with the introduction of the higher denominations, the higher denomination now, which is 200 Ghana cedis, is now equivalent to about 40 US dollars, which brings us partially back to where we were in 2007. And this anchors the macroeconomic stability program that we have introduced in the last 3 years. But this is also carefully being balanced with the announcement made by the governor last week that Bank of Ghana is piloting an e-currency program, so that yes, we are moving to e-currency program, but we need a balance between cash and electronic money. As long as we continue to be a cash-based economy and we push the agenda of a cash-light economy, that balance will be needed until we get to a point where we will see how e-currency will take over
So
this.
do I get from you that it was more of an issue with a loss in value of the old notes with respect to the 50 being the highest, or what was the main reason that you thought that it justified the introduction of these notes?
And I think that was the main reason in terms of the clawback of the debt-weight burden. In terms of transactions, I don't know about you, but if you step out there to make a high-value transaction, you have to carry a lot of money on you. You realize that unless you belong to the small group of people that use cards and other forms of electronic payment, the majority of people who use cash for very high value transactions will now start carrying volumes of money on them. And it's also expensive printing notes. And so we needed to make sure that we were able to address this creeping back of the deadweight burden and creeping back of the transaction cost of making transactions in the economy to ensure efficiency in the way business is done in a cash-based economy, whilst at the same time we pursue the digitalization agenda to move into e-currency, and we are starting a pilot program very soon.
I was going to ask that question because at the time that we are trying to move towards a cash light society, some would have said that these notes should have been put on the back burner because then the bank itself is championing an exercise where we use less cash in our day-to-day transaction.
So that's where you need a good balance. And so the question then will be that as we move to a cash light society, it takes time. Now, e-currency is going to come as a pilot. In the interim, what will be your highest value of your highest denomination? Does it bring about transaction costs in the way we transact business? Yes, it does. So you want to address that, at least claw it back to where we have stability and the value of the highest note was almost equivalent to the dollar, or 50 Ghana cedis was equivalent to about $50. That allowed the 50 to serve as a store of value. But now the 50 Ghana cedis is about $10, and it has become a transactional note. In that sense, it becomes very expensive because then you have to, given the clean note policy that we keep in the currency management system, that means that if we need to reprint the 50 Ghana cedis very often, because it's become a daily transactional currency. And that is not the balance, because the coin note barrier has also shifted. So that is also not the balance. If you look at the survey that we did, then you realize that there is a need to push the value a bit high to get a good balance between cash light and cash base.
So why wouldn't we have done just 100 and also add 200 cities to it?
So that's why I'm saying that if you look at where we were coming from, if you did 100, how much gain will you have clawed back? I mean, if you did 100, you will have the highest value being $20. Does that really address the cost of transacting business using cash? Maybe not. But 200 brings you partially back, not fully back, partially back to when we started the redenomination. Because now the 200 takes you about 40, equivalent of a 40 US dollars. Why do I keep on referring to US dollars? Because a larger volume of our transaction is in US dollars in terms of imports and exports. Is invoiced in US dollars. So it's a benchmark. If you look at the pound, the euro, you benchmark it, the value has been lost as a result of macroeconomic instability. And in terms of clawing back, this takes you back not fully to where we were in 2007. So that is a way to come back in terms of about 200 Ghana cedi denomination. And then we also introduced the pilot program for the e-currency.
I understand the monetary argument and then the value argument, but if I want to do a little bit of macro balance here, I see it as more of a macro need than a micro need. In your survey as well, what were the normal businesses telling you that in transacting with the 50 CD notes, these were our problems and we need a sort of upping the value a little bit to deal with that? Did it also a need by the general business community that also deal with the currency?
Yes, that's why you realize that the coin barrier has also been shifted. So today's activity wasn't only on the two higher denominations. You realize that the coin barrier has moved from 1 Ghana cedi to 2 Ghana cedis. It tells you how the whole the instability has moved the coin note barrier. And once you shift, in fact, if you look at the analysis that was done, the coin barrier actually should be at the 5 Ghana cedi note. In fact, we should have had a 5 Ghana cedi coin. That's where the coin barrier actually is. But I think it's prudent to put it at 2 Ghana cedis and let it run side by side with the 5 Ghana cedi note. Because that also ensures the degree of exchangeability that you need for a currency system to be efficient. And so once the coin note barrier has shifted, it tells you that the volumes of transaction, the value of transaction has also shifted. And so you see the structure of the currency shifting forwards. And I think that this is a perfect clawback, not fully clawing back, but a perfect clawback.
Let's look at the timing of the currency issue. And I know there's the political economy, which BOG always want to look at, even though you're always concentrating on monetary issues. Why this time and the whole thing about the timing of this currency?
I mean, if you look at the past 3 years, we've been in the phase of consolidation. And clearly, you agree with me in terms of the macroeconomy that this is the time that we can say that we've really consolidated the imbalances that we have gone through in the past. You look at where inflation is as we speak now. For the first time in years, we've kept inflation in single digits since April 2018. This is really the time where we are to be able to say that we've consolidated the stability program that was started, and that is the right time to introduce it. You realize that this is purely a technical exercise done by the central bank based on the macroeconomic analysis and the need for currency management.
And I raised the political economy argument because, again, some would say that these are currencies that are going to be issued for election-related spending, which the Bank of Ghana itself is trying to keep the whip to ensure that on the fiscal side, there's a lot of prudence going into an election year?
I find it difficult to understand how that can be issue for election related spending, because this is going to be another denomination as part of the total currency in circulation. So there can be any other currency to support any transaction. This is another denomination. So assuming you have a 5 billion Ghana cedis of currency in circulation, this is just one of the denominations in terms of the total currency in circulation. So that does not increase the total currency in circulation. You have a bit more, an increase in the family of notes that makes the total currency in circulation. So that issue about issued for spending for any other reason does not come in. It's just making choices available in terms of the family of notes.
So, do I get from you that, again, in terms of managing the currency, there will be some withdrawals and pushing in this so that we will balance it out with economic activity?
Exactly. That's precisely what is going to happen. You realize that the two Ghana cedis is going to run side by side with the notes. And over time, as the notes get out of the system, we get the full benefit of the coin, because then we don't have to reprint notes that go very often. Have you seen the one Ghana cedi note before? It gets into your hands, and by the time it gets back to the central bank, it's no longer fit for reissue. And so as we run this side by side, the two Ghana cedi coin then takes over and then replaces the old notes that will not be reissued. Yeah.
I come back to also the question about inflation as well, and help me out again. The fear is that if these notes get into circulation, just like what happened to the Peswa coin and then the one CD, there's this funny analogy that people will try to round up their prices and transactions to match up these notes. What has the Bank of Ghana done in this area in terms of your market surveillance to ensure that you guard against this, and are you contributing to inflation as well?
I think issuing new family of notes does not contribute to inflation. That's not what it does. Issuing new family of notes gives options to ensure ability to be able to pay for transactions, degree of exchangeability. When you issue an amount of money, you'll be able to get change for it. But it does not add, because the value of the currency is intrinsic, right? It does not add to inflation in the sense that because you have a higher denomination, prices are going to go up. Assuming you're going to buy something that costs 200 Ghana cedis. In the past, you maybe would have used 450 notes. Now you have an option to issue one note. How does that lead to increase in prices? It's just
Option.
option.
The transactional
Yeah,
value.
exactly.
The transactional value would contribute to that, because on the lower note, some said that the one pessoa becoming people not using it again impacted on pricing.
So that has happened already. You realize that the one pessoa note that's why the coin note barrier has shifted. Right, that's why there was a need to bring in the two Ghana cedi notes. So that happens at the lower end. That's already implicit right after redenomination. You see a one-time jump in rounding up, but it's not a consistent running up after that. And that happened in 2007, where the boundary shifted and there was a one-time jump. This time, nothing is happening other than adding additional options for you to say that instead of using 4 notes, I can use one note to pay. That doesn't change the value of the transaction that you are doing. It gives you an option to be able to have an ease of transaction by just carrying less paper notes on you to be able to transact exactly the same value.
Let's come to the bit about education. And we were all taken by surprise by this thing. Now it's a legal tender right now. How are you going to deal with the appreciation of this currency? Because already, even with some of the notes that were issued previously, we had a challenge where some market women said that this is not note from, I don't know this as a Ghana city note. What is the plan and the strategy to also ensure that people appreciate that this is a legal tender that can be used? Maybe you and I, we do. What about the market?
No, that is a very valid question. There is a very comprehensive education program that has been put in place. I'm sure you were down there with us when you saw a bit of that education program going in place. The public recognition features of these notes are very easy for you to identify, to quickly identify that this is a legal, this is not a counterfeit, but this is the legal tender issued by the Bank of Ghana. We have lined up a lot of educational programs at different levels, at the radio stations, at the TV stations, using information vans, going through the media, the print media, going throughout the country. We have lined all up to be able to educate people on this new note as a legal tender, and also the public recognition features to ensure that everyone is able to identify what is a genuine note that has been issued by the central bank. And it's starting immediately. In fact, it has started now. The public education campaign has just started. It started with the launch, and now it's being rolled out all over.
The economists will always want to say that all other things being equal, when will these currencies be rolled out onto them? Because the banks also have to do the necessary calibrations and all the rest. Is it next week? Is it the next 2 weeks? So what's the rollout plan in terms of issuing it out?
So as far as it being legal tender, it is immediate. Now that it's been announced, these notes are legal tender. But you are right. Today is a Friday. The banks will now have to. Normally, they come on Mondays for species to be moved to their various branches for them to feed their ATMs and others. So they will come. It has to be calibrated into the system. And so from next week, you begin to see, depending on the demands from the banks, these notes beginning to go out for customers to be able to, or for the public to be able to get access to them to use. But the systems are being calibrated as we speak now, and the banks will start getting these species moved to their various branches starting from next week, Monday.
But some will say that it will also be a demand based because it's not. Do I get from you demand based?
Because not everybody who is going to use the 100 or the 200 Ghana cedis for transactions immediately. But we also recognize that once it's new and it's very beautiful, I don't know whether you've seen it, everybody wants to see a copy. So you have an initial jump in demand, not just for transaction, but just to appreciate this very beautiful note. And so that is also being taken care of. But yes, you are right, it will be a demand base as to how many people want to demand that, because as I said, it's mostly going to store value and also for high value transactions.
I see the security features on these notes, and these are up modern tech and all the rest. This is not going to come easy in terms of cost, right?
That's why if you look at the family of notes, you see that as you move high, the security features are different, because these are put on higher value denominations. As you go to the lower value denominations, you see a different type of security features. Yes, it's high class, it's tech savvy, it's expensive, but it's commensurate with the value. And in terms of savings, it's very huge savings to the central bank, because these are the most modern security features and very, very difficult to counterfeit. I don't know whether, I think you were there, you saw it being displayed. Even though it's high tech and most modern, it is also very easy on the eye of the public in terms of any other person being able to recognize these security features and to be able to tell whether this is genuine or not. So that's the advantage of these new security features that we have on the currency.
But some would say that, so looking at our current challenges and all the rest again in the normal political economy there, do you think that the cost of these notes warrants its introduction at this time?
I mean, there is a huge savings to be able to be made out of the introduction of these notes. I have already mentioned that given the transaction rate and the usage and the clean note policy that we have in this country, we have to reprint a lot in terms of the lower denomination, because I don't know whether you've seen the 1 Ghana cedi, the 2 Ghana cedi. By the time it comes back from circulation to the central bank, a greater percentage of it is no longer fit to be reintroduced. But then you have to then replace them in the system. And by replacing them in the system, you have to reprint. So these higher notes reduce the volume, the velocity of the currency being used, and then you get more value for it, and you don't reprint them at a very frequent intervals, and so that's huge savings in terms of cost of printing currency for the country.
So you think that the investment in these new notes actually rather save the banks a lot of money for the old notes that are in the system?
Exactly. Exactly. There is a lot of huge savings based on bringing in these new notes because of the usage that we have with the lower denominations.
So looking at the durability of
And
these,
also the coin actually also saves a lot of. You see, we should also pay attention to the coin because the coin also saves a lot of money because the coin will be in the system for a long time. Meanwhile, if it was a 2 Ghana cedi note or 1 Ghana cedi note, you would have gone so many rounds of reprinting. And that's a lot of savings that will be made by introducing the 2 Ghana cedi coins and the higher denomination.
looking at the family of notes, so do I understand that with respect to the durability of these notes, it would have that you would have more of, let's just say, 100 in the system because now it is durable, it's cost saving compared to the number of 50 notes in circulation?
No, that would depend on the demand structure. So you cannot tell upfront the numbers, but they are available to be issued based on the demand structure, and you have them available in the system. But already, if you look at the statistics, 50 has become a transaction note, and the frequency of issuing 50 has increased significantly. So there's a lot more 50 Ghana cedi notes out there in the system.
My last but one question again. So, in all these things, how much is it costing us to print these notes?
I don't have the exact number on top of my head now.
But for you, would you see this cost as
Very cost effective.
that is what you would say for now?
Yes.
And later we'll get the details. On
Yes.
the
Normally, when we publish our financial statements, the cost of the currency is published in
but
there.
if it's the rule or any other, there might be some initial cost to this.
But I don't have that figure on top of my head now. Yeah.
What is your final words to Ghanaians out there? Because again, there are the skeptics, there are people who would bring the political argument, the political economy about the timing and all the rest. What's the final words to Ghanaians out there as this currency or the set of notes becomes legal tender?
No, I think my word is that these are very beautiful notes that are coming in to try to address the creeping back of the deadweight burden that is impacting the cost of transaction. In terms of, when I say cost of transactions, the burden that you have to go through to do high value transactions, and it's also cost saving for the central bank to have that. And the timing is appropriate, and it's coming at a time where macroeconomic stability has been well anchored, and we can all see that now. And so the re-emergence of the deadweight burden and the transaction cost that came after the period of high inflation and currency depreciation is being addressed with the introduction of these higher denominations, and we are doing it at a time where we have achieved significant macroeconomic stability. I want to encourage every Ghanaian to embrace this and keep the motto, know the cedi and keep it clean.
And in terms of education, it's still working.
It started already. We started it with the launch, and it's being rolled out as we speak on social media, on newsprint, both paper and electronic. And we are going to have vans running out throughout the whole country, educating the general public on the public recognition features of these new notes for general acceptability.
Governor, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, George. I appreciate it. Thank you.